In this episode, George Stavrou joins Dr. Rob, and they discuss whether meat is actually good or bad, and whether a plant-based diet really is everything it's all cracked up to be.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's podcast of the Stavrou Method, an holistic approach to optimal health and wellness. Today's guest is my good friend, Dr. Rob Horovitz. For those of you that don't know him, here's his bio from his own podcast. Dr. Rob is a father of two and lifelong health nut, but not a purist. As a naturopathic doctor with not only clinical experience, Rob shares his unique perspective of the industry side of his profession. If you are a shopper, reader, listener of all things natural health, this interview is for you. What do USP isolated vitamins and minerals, chemically extracted herbal extracts, and flavor of the week killing compounds really have to do with being healthy and promoting lifelong wellness anyways? Do we even know what will happen when we consume these chemical or natural substances? If you want more information on that, tune into Dr. Rob's own podcast. But in the meantime, let's get Rob going on some of the myths, misconceptions, and misinformation in the health industry today.
Yeah, absolutely. So good to be here, George. Really. Any excuse we have to just spend some time with each other and kind of, shoot the gab on this stuff. It's so much fun.
It's been too long. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. You got the wife and the kids at home, and you're just super busy in the whole health industry. So, I'm just excited about this information, as I'm sure our listeners are.
Yeah, for sure. You raised an amazing point with regards to misconceptions and myths within the industry. There's just so many, and I think that's the point. I think that's why I started the podcast. That's why I thought of you could reach more people online than you can in person and through media or in a book or whatever. But different people either read or prefer watching or prefer listening. If they're in the car, maybe that's the one moment of their day that they have to listen to something that could positively impact their life. So that's why I've started it. But you're right. There are so many. It's so confusing. It's confusing enough for us.
Yeah.
But
we're well versed in the industry. So what's it like for, say, the general person that's out there that's reading things, and sometimes the information does look legitimate, but how do they really decipher what's out there? Like, I'll start off with one myth that irritates me to no end. And I'm sure I'm going to be upsetting a lot of people when I say this, but it's like, I'm not here to win a popularity contest. It's just basically calling it as I see it. So you have a lot of people out there that's saying a completely plant-based diet is the best thing for everybody all the time. And like one of the challenges I have with it, you look at different cultures throughout the world. So it's like, what do people in you'll say the North Pole and the South Pole consume? It's minimal plants, and it tends to be healthier fat and healthier meat. And then when you have people closer to the equator, it's just more plant-based with minimal consumption of fats and meat. And if say eating a fair amount of meat was detrimental to somebody's health, without those cultures not have died off at one time. I think as long as you're eating clean food for the most part, it's just like sometimes you have to see what your body can handle. I tried the whole vegan approach years ago. It's phenomenal for some people. I found even as much research I did, say with food combining, and it's just like you'll get my optimal 5 to 6 meals in per day. I was always tired, had no energy whatsoever. So I was eating clean and following everything down to the letter. I find my body just does better with healthier sources of fats and animal sources of protein. So what are your thoughts on that?
No question. I think you have to factor in different people, different strokes for different folks. There is no single diet that's just for absolutely everyone. Even on myself, I find, and a lot of people will find, when they eat meat or when they eat certain fat, you feel better. You do. And that's powerful, because anything we can do to make ourselves feel better, I mean, that's part of the goal. So far, there is no diet that's been shown to dramatically prolong lifespan. Now, that's relative. I mean, the person that lives to the age of 60 and dies of heart disease compared to the person that lives to 120, which is very rare, extremely rare, but that's still a double lifespan. When you think about it. So, I mean, it is quite, so contextually, it's very different now, but we can't attribute it to any one particular thing.
No.
On the other side, though, I mean, sugar makes me feel amazing. I don't know about you. when I eat a Snickers chocolate bar, I feel great for 2 minutes and not so great after. Or, the thought of eating McDonald's or a slice of pizza or something, I feel great knowing I'm going to get it. So there's that other aspect too, this addiction we have to food. But you're right. There is something to be said about meat and fatty acids. You brought up a good point about up north, for example, in the Arctic, different populations. So it's hard to say. I mean, farming practices is just a big deal now too. What are they doing to the animals? But I will say, I think in our society, we're just protein obsessed. And I think it's something that nobody really talks about. They're so extreme. It's where they're getting their information from, these Hollywood magazines and so forth, where it has to be one way or the other. But the point is just with protein and animal protein here, we're just obsessed with it. We eat so much of it. Yeah. Almost every single meal, almost every single day. And so when you put that into context, I think that's where the real problem lies.
I agree.
Because meat is acidic, protein, animal fat, it's very acidic, it's very pro-inflammatory. I mean, those increased risk factors for pretty much all chronic diseases known. Acidity and inflammation leaches minerals from your bones.
Exactly.
Contributes inflamed and oxidized fat. Actually, that's the primary topic that I talked about in an upcoming book that I wrote, is what happens to fat when it becomes inflamed or oxidized. So I think that's the context. I agree with you. I don't think you can have a blanket statement of saying meat is bad for you. No. But
and that's definitely a challenge I have there. And I used to be a big meat eater when I was younger, where the steak would take up pretty well the whole plate. Yeah. You could barely see the veggies around it. Yeah. So with some of the information I've been getting into lately, they're saying treat animal source of protein more as, say, a side dish rather than the main thing. So I don't have a problem going out with, say, you and some other friends and enjoying, the so-called unhealthy foods like, my wings or burger or big steak. But I'm not going to do that all the time. And I recognize it for what it is. So I'll still try to get a nice salad in there and some fibrous veggies to balance things out a little bit. So I'll still enjoy the steak because it's something I've been looking forward to. But I'm also recognizing that it should not be the be-all and end-all of my meal.
It's the indulgence part. So that's what we have to flip. Absolutely. Yeah. I like I use the steak. It's an indulgence. So we're indulging in something that makes us feel good, makes us feel full. It's something that, it's an easy, convenient way of eating for sure. But also respect goes a long way, respecting where our food comes from, what goes into it. It's an animal's life. So there's that aspect of it for us to be very sensitive about that. But I agree with you completely. In some people, and, specific food types for people's blood type, that's another avenue.
Exactly.
People just feel better. Sometimes they just crave it. You kind of need it. It is in our genetics. So, we have as a species evolved for the most part eating meat. But actually, I'll tell you another misconception on the flip side, something that I get a lot is, do we need animal protein to gain muscle and to be strong and to have vigor?
Not necessarily. And I think that depends on the person. I find with my body, I respond better with animal protein because I have experimented with just plant-based protein. It didn't work for me. But I'm not going to dump on somebody that's getting amazing results if they're not taking in any meat whatsoever. Yeah. It's like if it works for you and they're healthy, fine, but it shouldn't be a religion per se where somebody's just trying to ram their philosophy down my throat. It's like, we're here to help one another out. So maybe we can learn from one another and just say, what? I recognize that I shouldn't have just the steak on my plate. So I can benefit from learning to somebody that knows about some plant-based diets and recipes out there, throw it into the mix.
That's it, man. Variety is key. I mean, you could lose. There are so many different ways to lose, and then people become daunted. You consume primarily plant-based diets, but you get some sort of disease or illness because of all the chemicals they're spraying them, pesticides, herbicides, even the so-called organic herbicides and pesticides. Some of them can be worse for you than the conventional stuff. Take celery, for example. There's a lot of powerful data. So I think switching it up, we are lucky now living in 2018 where we have so much variety in our food, along with looking for key distinctions, that we can eat a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and tailor it to it. Yeah, we should. episode, George Stavrou joins Dr. Rob in discussing the ketogenic diet, whether it's good or bad, and is it really okay to just eat what makes you feel good? You know, and here's another thing. Another kind of, I don't know if you'd really call it a misconception, but something to pay attention to. I find nobody really pays attention to this. I'm baffled by it. Is cooking method. So take an unhealthy food like a hot dog. Mm-hmm. You know, like good old street meat at Finch Station. You know, it's delicious. It's amazing. It's a whole. The natural health industry would be up in arms. Oh my God, hot dog. It's like the worst food ever. Processed. It has all these different chemicals in it. Fine. I'm with you. Yeah. But nobody ever talks about scorching the hot dog, which is infinitely worse, I think. Yeah. You get that hot dog, it comes out, it's just burnt black. Yeah. I think that's
happening.
Yeah, that's part of the conversation. I mean, you can go and get a Napolitan style pizza, and people love it because it's all kind of bubbly. It's just delicious, the dough. But it comes out, you have these black spots on it, and it drives me absolutely crazy. People saying, "Oh no, that's where the flavor is." No, it's not where the flavor is. That's just burnt food. Exactly. That's unhealthy. I mean, if it's carbs, you're creating acrylamides and all sorts of stuff which are cancerous. Yeah. And in hot dogs too, if you're barbecuing meat versus, boiled meat doesn't really taste that great. No. But I mean, if you scorch your meat, the compounds created by the cooking method could possibly be way, way worse than anything that the meat itself could have done to you.
Makes sense.
So I think
there should be a continuum with it as well. I'm not a fan of having raw meat. No. I think it should be cooked to a certain internal temperature. But if you're on that other end of the spectrum that you're talking about, it's burnt. So it's like, you've got to be somewhere in the middle with it. And it's like, because you figure whatever that you're doing, either you're getting closer to health or further away from it. So if you're consuming something like that where it is scorched, that means extra work that your body needs to do elsewhere. So still enjoy the hot dog. And I'm glad that you mentioned that as an example because it ties into the whole idea of, say, the occasional cheat meal or even a cheat day. It's say the person's relationship with the food. So you can have the ideal nutrition plan set up, like the people doing all these lab works and this and that. And you sit there, it's like, oh, this fucking meal again. I can't stand this. It's like, it's healthy. But if I'm going out with you and we're enjoying our, whatever, and it's not the healthiest per, the recommendations, but, we're enjoying our company, and sometimes that emotional side overrides the negativity from the so-called bad foods. Yeah. I'm not saying, you'll use it as an excuse all the time, but if we're, say, eating clean and healthy a good 80 to 90% of the time, the other 10 to 20%, I think we'll do okay. Now, if somebody that's a professional athlete or has some major chronic disease or illness, different story. They've got to stick to their regimen a lot closer than, say, the average person. Yeah, for sure. Somebody who's pregnant, they're trying to nourish themselves and they're asking the question of, how can I be most nourished for myself and my baby, for example? Then, hey, absolutely. I mean, plant-based diet has amazing advantages. From a nutrient-dense perspective, nothing comes even close. The phytonutrients, it's just nutrient-dense. Meat is not nutrient-dense at all. I mean, it's macronutrient. I mean, it has a high amount of protein. There's certain things in there, but you're not. It's very high calorie per nutrient and very acidic and pro-inflammatory per nutrient. So whereas the plant-based diet is amazing, but I think on the flip side, in this episode, Rob and George Stavrou talk about pregnancy and plant-based foods, burnt foods, acrylamides, and cooking method. I agree with you. If you just feel better. I think you made a great example of the plate where you'd have this massive steak and then a teeny, a piece of broccoli and a thing of rice. You can't even see it. It's hiding.
No. That you can't eat every day. Like that, I don't care how good that makes you feel. I mean, you're just asking for trouble. I mean,
exactly.
You'd be out of your mind to think otherwise. That's the meat and potato person. Yeah, you're going to feel great on it all the time, but you're going to die at an early. I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully you live forever. I don't know. Who am I to say? But I think
also the quality of life too. That's the big thing. Like that example you brought up earlier. If somebody lives to the age of 120, I don't want to just live to a long age. I want to be vibrant until my final days,
Yeah,
rather than being
exactly.
hooked up to the machine and for my last, say, 10 years of my life or something.
Yeah. It's funny. So let's say misconception,
Yeah.
kind of tying into meat, the ketogenic diet. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
on the ketogenic diet?
I see the validity with some people, but it goes back to what we talked about a little bit before. It depends on the person as well. So it's like, some people, are you familiar with the works of Dr. William Walcott, I think his name is, gets into the metabolic typing diet. So he'll mention like, some people thrive on the whole higher carb approach, minimal animal protein, minimal healthy fats. Some people on the other end of the spectrum where it is the ketogenic, and then you have a third category, which is a balance of everything. I think a big part is knowing like your own particular metabolic type and working within
Yeah.
it. I'm not totally against keto, but I think it's like there should be a little bit of leeway and just say it's like enjoy the weekend and maybe take in the extra carbs that you wouldn't normally have had.
Absolutely. So not keto.
No,
Absolutely. I
like
see.
maybe cyclical keto.
Yeah. For me, it's very binary on that issue. I don't
Yeah,
like keto. I'll say it. I don't like it. I think it's a
no,
horrible diet. I don't like keto at all. I think people are out of their minds with keto. And I
yeah,
think the reason for it is because it's one of those diets that promise that you can have your cake and eat it too, sort of thing. People
mhm,
love fat. They love meat. I mean,
yeah.
meat is great.
Oh,
Meat is so tasty. It makes you feel so good
yeah,
instantly. Like if you're hungry, there's just nothing like it. It's just
yeah,
if you're that type of person, and then fat too. I mean, butter on toast, butter in coffee. That would be
mhm,
another one, by the way. The whole grass-fed butter, chemical-free coffee thing. That's coming up
yeah,
next, buddy. Just
mhm,
prepare
definitely.
yourself.
Well, and I'm looking forward to it because, like, it's not that
Yeah,
often that I do a series of interviews with a guest. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's a one-off, and that's fine. But like, there's so much information that
so much.
that you can share with people. And so instead of just scratching the surface on like 10 different things, I'm happy to do a series with you. And just like whatever comes to mind, we'll just go to town on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I agree, but yeah, people are out of their mind. So, I mean, this diet, ketogenic diet, has been going on forever. It was the Atkins diet before.
yeah.
Uh, People
It's
will
just
lose
this
weight.
rename.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll go into ketogenesis, and you'll burn fat and all that, and so you'll lose weight. You can get skinny. Um, you feel good, but again,
Yeah,
I feel good eating a Reese's peanut butter cup.
yeah.
Eating Halloween candy, I feel great. I don't know about you, man, but if I eat like a Rolo bar, I feel
Mhm.
great too. But that doesn't mean, if I eat enough of them, I'm going to get diabetes. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and you don't
eventually.
want to live off of it. And you brought up an interesting point that I just learned about lately, like, the whole idea of metabolic flexibility.
Yeah,
So it's like, it shouldn't just be, it's like, okay, well, we're so meat and fat adapted where if we don't have access to a meal like that and we just have a carb dish in front of us,
yeah,
it throws us for a loop. It's like, it's still healthy food. So like, the body should be able to just say, this is good stuff. What do I do with it?
yeah,
And there's one colleague and good friend of mine, Dr. Molo Di Pasquale, he's not a fan of keto either. It's like, he's just saying like, with his metabolic diet is it's keto in a sense, but then he's got like, a cheat meal throughout, say like, in the middle of the week, and then a cheat day on the weekend so he can have those extra carbs and so-called forbidden foods. So it balances things out in the long run, rather than just being
yeah.
strictly keto the whole time.
In today's episode, George Stavrou and Dr. Rob talk about grass-fed butter, carbs, and fats, whether they're good or bad, and, well, what's wrong with fat anyway, if anything. You said it, man. Balance. Like if you're eating a meal where your protein is very high, your fat is high, and your carb
Yeah.
is low, on paper it sounds okay, but people are missing the boat. It's not the carbs; it's the refined carbs and the chemicals that are added in there. Like it's all this grocery store carbohydrates. You go to the artisanal section. Actually, this
Yeah.
morning, so I did it. This
Yeah.
morning, it's Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I woke up. I'm like, man, I feel like having sausages and
Yeah.
sourdough and eggs. So I went to the store and I bought some artisanal sourdough bread.
Yeah.
Man, it's not real sourdough bread. It's
No.
just some frozen dough that they put in the oven, and it pops out seconds later. It's not that long ferment real
That's right.
sourdough. So, and a lot of the breads that you buy in the store have all these different chemicals in there. Fats. Yeah, there's healthy fats out there, no question. But just because a fat is healthy doesn't give you carte blanche to eat copious amounts of it. There's magnitude. Omega-3, fine. But if you start popping tablespoons of the best quality Alaskan salmon oil or any of the best quality fish oil in the world, you're asking for heart disease. You don't live in the Arctic. You have a lot of stress. We eat our foods that are overcooked. We have a lot of inflammation and oxidation. Hell, if you just go for a run, you know how much oxidative free radicals you're just pumping into if you're a smoker, if you're a just chronic stress, metabolic waste, you're creating all these free radicals. That fat is going to become oxidized, and oxidized fat will lead to, absolutely. So,
and look at the bigger picture. That's certainly a huge part of it. And there's a concept out there, not just counting calories, it's counting chemicals.
Yeah, what are you doing to the foods? You can eat grass-fed butter. Grass-fed butter might be much better than regular butter, but that doesn't mean that you could eat a stick of it every single day and it's going to be good for you. You're going to die, unless you have a genetic lottery kind of thing. But
exactly. Well, and then we get to the whole idea of food displacement. So if I'm eating a lot of this one thing, then there isn't really enough room in my stomach for something else unless I'm force feeding myself. So while on paper it's nice to have the meal is balanced on a per meal basis, it's not always easy. So let's say your best friend's getting married on the weekend and you're going to go to town with the whole wedding buffet and things like that, plan for it. So I'll work out a little bit more, and then it's maybe it's just fewer calories leading up to that big meal and fewer calories several days afterwards. So over the course of a week, my caloric content is pretty balanced and my meals are balanced, but it's not balanced per meal. It's balanced over so many meals for the whole week.
Absolutely. So actually, it's funny. I just put up 2 videos, and I think it's on the podcast too. I call it kind of like the best tip video and the best tool video kind of thing. And it's so simple. It's something I think people might be aware of, but never, ever use. So you're talking about magnitude, moderation.
Yeah.
People think that they're doing something in moderation, whether it be alcohol or French fries or whatever it is. But one of the best tips I've ever heard, nutritionally, is diet diary. We all use them, naturopathic doctors, nutritionists, they use diet diary. So you'll go to your naturopath or dietitian or your nutritionist or whoever, and actually they'll spend the first visit often telling you to go home and write this diet diary. So if you have a diet diary out, as they should, right? But you could save a lot of money and time if you just come to your first appointment with your diet diary already built in. And what it is essentially, well, you know what it is, but it's basically like a calendar for the week, a week or two. Yeah. And you write down exactly what you're eating, when you're eating, and then amounts. So milliliters if it's drinks, or grams, or cup of this, cup of that.
That's right.
The number one tool was teaspoons, tablespoons. You want to be measuring with cups, teaspoons, tablespoons.
And look for patterns.
Absolutely. You look for patterns, and then you could see objectively how much of certain foods you are eating. I mean, how much fat are you actually consuming? And do you think that's really moderate or not? And if you don't, you should lower it. If you're not sure, maybe you should consult with somebody,
Exactly. Yeah. That's a huge thing, and it doesn't have to be too lengthy a food diary by any means.
No.
I think a week or two. Yeah. If it's only a couple days, I don't think a couple days really gives enough justice to it, because I eat differently on the weekends than I do during the week, just because I don't work on the weekends at my regular gig.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a matter of recognizing that.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. In today's episode, Dr. Rob and George Stavrou talk about vitamins, minerals, and supplements from a bird's eye view, pros and cons. And really, just to remind everyone that nobody's the expert on inflammation.
Very nice.
Trying
Let's
to,
get to. Sorry, I was going to
yeah,
say.
no, no.
How about looking at say like vitamins, minerals, supplements? So what should people be
Oh
watching
my
out
God.
for? So it's like you've got some like that are just more isolates made in the lab, and then others come from nature. Could you have to say the pros and cons of each one? That'd be cool.
Yeah, so let's start with vitamins and minerals, isolates.
Mm.
So vitamins and minerals are not food. They're chemicals, basically. They're isolated. It's like a drug, basically. It's a
Yeah.
compound. So vitamin C, it's called ascorbic acid, right? B6 would be pyridoxal 6-phosphate. There's slightly different forms and versions of these compounds, but essentially they're like drug names.
Yeah.
And they're chemical compounds. And they have huge advantages, especially when you're comparing them to pharmaceutical drugs. So that would be a pro. So let's say certain mental health disorders, there have been some great studies on what vitamin C can do in high doses, ascorbic acid, or niacin, for example, is another one, B3 in high doses. People with carpal tunnel syndrome, there's been some crazy good studies for B6, for example. So you could use high dose. Magnesium has been used a lot for anxiety or sleep or loose stools. If you buy the like the Natural Calm magnesium citrate.
That's
and so
right.
forth.
Yeah.
So those would be pros. Not medical advice, of course, but
No.
yeah. But the con is that once you put these compounds into your body, there's no telling what they'll do. So we don't know what high dose vitamin, actually, in some respects we do. So actually, I talk about this in the book too, mind you. Anytime we've really ever looked at a high dose isolate, like a vitamin or mineral, over a long period of time, there haven't been as many studies as we'd like, but anytime we've really ever looked at them, they only really cause detriment. When you look at vitamin A, C, E, calcium is a big one. That's a huge myth and misconception we can get into, but they only show harm over the long run. And I think part of the reason is because you just don't know what they're doing. So that would be the con. It's like taking a drug for a long, long time. If you have a headache, and I've had headaches where I just feel like I'm going to vomit, and it's just better to take an Advil. Yeah. Take an Advil. Like it'll make you better in 20 minutes. And then.
Yeah. Well, it's a quick fix. At the same time, look at the underlying issue. What's causing it? What type of stressors are you eating too much of something or not enough of something else? And even what you're saying with high doses of things, I definitely follow what you're saying. Like, high doses for a shorter period of time, and it's monitored by a healthcare practitioner that really knows their stuff, rather than as a lifestyle thing indefinitely. It's because you don't always need a high dose of anything the rest of your life. Absolutely. As good as it looks like, because after a while, with vitamin C, it's like, there's a whole pro-oxidant versus antioxidant type of thing that's going on as well. Beyond a certain point there, it's like it's causing damage.
Yes. And so I think that's exactly it. So we don't know what's going on. So I'm not an advocate of taking any vitamin or mineral for a long period of time ever. Now, absolutely. And then there's the idea of food. So, but it's very tricky. The natural health industry has become very good at marketing this idea that vitamins and minerals are natural or that come from food. Be careful, because if you don't care, if you're just looking for vitamins and minerals, then it's fine. But if you're looking for whole food, telling somebody that it's natural or from food does not mean that you're just getting orange powder as a vitamin C supplement. First of all, very few companies will ever just rip out vitamin C from a food like an orange. It's very expensive, number one. And also, even if you could do that, more times than not, it requires harsh chemical solvents to rip it out.
Wow. Yeah. So it's causing a lot of damage in the long run too.
Yeah. And plus you have no idea what that's going to do in the body. But if you take an orange, or like an orange powder that's dried up without using any chemicals, like a freeze drying or some other innovative chemical free process, there's vitamin C contained within, but that's the idea. It's contained within the context of the whole orange, other immune compounds, other antioxidants, other things that balance it out. Yeah. We know that you could take that type of supplement for a long period of time in the same way that you could eat an orange for a long period of time, unless you have a sensitivity to citrus. That's a different story.
That's right.
But even then, with whole food, if you eat copious amounts of orange in the same day, I mean, you'll have diarrhea. I mean,
and you're flushing yourself.
Yeah, you can't keep. I mean, how much mango could you eat on your best day?
Yeah.
After a Canadian winter here, I could probably eat quite a few mangoes. Like today, I could probably eat quite a few of them.
Exactly. But you're not going to do it for the rest of the year.
No, you're going to get sick of it, and then eventually you're going to be like, ugh, you know what? I can't even look at mango anymore. So the same with supplement. You gotta change it up, and you need variety, I think. And I think that's the big key message when you're looking at supplements and you're reading the labels.
Yeah.
I mean, this subject I could talk about all day. Like we could spend a week talking about what to look for on labels. Like when somebody looks at a green powder, maybe we can talk about this on the next
definitely
podcast. But kind of like, there's a million green supplements out there. Especially a lot of these, like, what do you call these, multi-level marketing and so forth?
Yeah, like network marketing and direct marketing.
Yeah, some are better than others. What should you look for on the labels?
We could get into that before. Well, if you interrupt for a second, so it's like, one of the challenges I have is like we both worked in retail health stores over the years. The whole idea of supplement means in addition to, it's not supposed to replace things. So it's like, don't go for that quick fix where you're just relying on all these powders and pills and whatever. Take a look at what you're putting in your body. What type of foods and beverages are you consuming regularly? And the supplements can fill in the gaps. It's like, I'm not going to keep picking out at the local fast food joint or something like that. It's like, well, I've got my green powder over here and it balances things out. It's like, let's work on that foundation first, and the other stuff, it's like, use it as I need it.
Absolutely. Calcium. Big misconception. Do you need calcium or like do you need calcium for bone loss? And it's like do you need calcium for bone loss? There's the question.
My understanding is you actually need more magnesium for bone loss rather than the calcium. I could be mistaken.
Well, it depends on where's the calcium. I mean, calcium is a huge component of bones.
Yeah.
But I think we're not looking at the root cause. So we see calcium, bone calcium being leached out of our bones, among other minerals like magnesium and so forth.
Yeah.
But the natural health industry has created this paradigm where we believe now as a society that we need to take calcium pills, usually from calcium carbonate or calcium carbonate bound to something else like a bisglycinate or citrate or whatever, claiming higher absorption of calcium. Great. That just means you're absorbing more of the exact same calcium molecule, which is usually from like a rock. Calcium carbonate is chalk.
Yeah.
But if you look at one of the leading root causes of bone loss, it's inflammation. So it's not just, we lose calcium. We lose it to inflammation a lot of the time. So what is causing the inflammation to you? It might be meat or it might not be. Yeah.
And that's a huge thing because, I'm nowhere near like, the expert on inflammation that you certainly are. But my understanding is like, if you minimize the amount of inflammation in a person's body, then you really don't have to go as crazy as far as like, other things to look out for.
Oh my God. You know what I've learned over time? Nobody's the expert on inflammation. So when I wrote this book, I originally was going to call it inflammation, sugar, and stress, because those are the three connections, at least that I made with chronic disease. So I thought it would be in 3 sections. So I would write one section on inflammation. I can't tell you how frustrating it was, how many versions I would write up and then just crush the paper, just throw it out. And it was like agonizing to write it. So I eventually changed the whole format of the book. It was so frustrating, but you're right. There's just so much on it. And, when it comes to supplements, we were talking about vitamins and minerals and calcium. If you have a lot of inflammation and it's leaching calcium from your bones, and then you take calcium supplements, chances are that calcium is going to be drawn to places of inflammation. And a lot of the time
maybe get deposited in there.
Absolutely. Or deposited in your arteries or elsewhere in your brain. There's all sorts of areas in the body, in your kidneys. So really have to be careful when it comes to supplementation, and you really have to know what you're doing. Just because something says natural in the bottle doesn't mean. I went into the grocery store this morning and there was an end cap, like a display for all the other, right? And it said something like "Au Natural Brioche." Brioche, like those beautiful kind of like soft, I guess, buns.
That's right.
And I couldn't resist. I picked up the package. I kind of felt it. It was so soft. It's first thing in the morning. I was a little tired. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But then I turned around. I read the ingredients. It's like all this mono and diglycerides and all this garbage that they put in there.
That's right.
So the number one tip is don't be fooled. Read the ingredients. And if in doubt, connect with somebody. There's so many experts online. I'm available. You can DM me on Instagram.
Definitely.
You can email me, George.
We're going to have your information there for sure.
Yeah.
Part of the podcast, it'll be mentioned on the website.
Yeah. And there's so many people out there. Just connect with the people who actually know, who don't have an invested interest in selling you something.
Exactly. That's huge.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and even the whole idea of inflammation, because a lot of times we're doing things that's causing inflammation, then we're doing something that's supposed to take care of it. Let's not cause it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, it's inevitable. I mean, we need inflammation. We need inflammation to heal. It's part of the immune response. We need it to fight infections. But you really have to know what you're putting in your body. And, a lot of times those of us who know, we still, doctors are infamous for this, actually. You'll walk outside of a hospital and you'll see doctors outside smoking cigarettes, right? Sometimes on a Tuesday or Thursday night, you'll catch me out on a patio. I'll be having chicken wings because I just can't take it anymore. Or we all have our vices in some way or another. Go ahead.
And recognize it for what it is. So you think, okay, either you're on the patio having your chicken wing or you're not eating at all. So it's like, you want to go 8 hours without any kind of nutrients, or do you want to have a quick fix that maybe it's not the best thing for you, but to get to the point there where you got some extra calories coming in so you can make it through the rest of the day, and then you eat healthy.
Yeah, one thing I've learned is that the purists, for the most part, are not really purists. The purists are purists, but then you'll catch them smoking pot outside. And I'm not necessarily against the herb itself, but man, you know how many free radicals you're generating by lighting the match? I mean, that's right. You might as well barbecue a steak or whatever. I mean, it's not. You have a lot of these so-called experts who think they know better than everybody, but they don't really talk. They don't really walk the walk. They're just talking. They're just blabbing for an audience. So
well, I just be upfront with people. I should do a fair amount of personal training in the day, and I tell my clients,
that's right. Yes.
I'm going to be a slob on the weekend. And you say, well, is that part of your plan? I go, I planned for it. I know what damage I'm causing, but I also know what to do to bounce back from it.
Plan for it. I look forward to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I look forward to being a slob on the weekend. Yeah.
So it's like, it's 5 or 6 steps forward, a couple steps back, and I'm still better off than, say, the average person that's out there. So if I'm going to be taking a large amount of meat, I'm going to make sure I've got enough fiber so I'm regular, so the meat just doesn't sit in my system for too long.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings up another thing. So
in today's episode, Dr. Rob and George Stavrou talk about gut health, probiotics, and veganism's biggest mistake.
It's like, basically, gut health is kind of like the second immune system. Yeah. I was wondering if you can get into that and just basic things that people do as far as foundation, vitamins, minerals, supplements, even just natural foods as far as promoting optimal gut health.
Yeah. Yeah. God, man, that's another topic. Such an amazing topic, gut health. What have you been focusing on? Has gut health been kind of one of those areas that you've really...
It's been one of the bigger things for me. I noticed that if my gut's not healthy or happy, it does a number on me. So I'm prone to bad headaches, can't focus as well as I'd like, poor sleep or too much sleep. But I find that, if I am just watching what I'm taking in, so I'm getting more to the sauerkraut and just fermented foods in general.
Yeah, fermented
so
foods.
Much better.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of probiotics at all as a supplement. For the most part, there's very, very, very few brands I would even touch. Not because I'm a snob, but because just I know what goes in. They're not good. They're just gimmicks. But fermented
that's
foods.
That's another topic down the road too.
Yeah, absolutely. But you hit it on the nail with fermented foods in moderation. Little bits like when you go out for Korean food and you get those little dishes of you have kimchi and the radish and da-da-da. I think cultures around the world have had it right for a long time.
Exactly.
Just cultures around the world historically, there have been other things that have gone on, like poverty and other forms of famine and disease and other factors. Like in India, they are so advanced in so many ways with respect to herbs and food.
Yeah.
But on the other side, when you look at a lot of the vegan, vegetarians, style diets, one of the reasons why they're so absolutely unhealthy is because they deep fry everything. So they're heating their oils.
Yeah.
So that kind of nulls and voids everything else, really. I mean, you could put turmeric in there till you're blue in the face. Yeah, it might prevent some oxidation, but you can't get away from eating fried foods for long without it having some sort of effect. I mean, I can only eat chicken wings for so much, and then, I get these wrinkles here, and I got to start, laying off the butter. You know what I mean?
Well, and you recognize that, which is good. So like sometimes it's a threshold.
Yeah.
I look at myself and I'll just use, say, my weight on the scale as an example. I tend to hover around about 205, 210. If I'm much higher than 210, I just feel heavy.
Yeah.
So it's like, what I find frustrating with some people out there is like, they take a lot of things for granted, and like, they don't realize that they should be tracking things on a regular basis. So at what point did it go from being a healthy thing where it's too much of something?
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, listen, buddy, I have so much fun doing this. We should do this on a regular basis. We should have like a series or something, and just even take questions. If there's anybody you know, or somebody you know who knows somebody who has specific questions, or who just wants something answered. Maybe, maybe they don't want to go into a doctor's office and they just want a question answered. It won't be medical advice, but it maybe steer them in the right direction or make them think about something that they can look into.
Definitely. Well, we can put that in there. You'll have a Q&A approach set up, and some people just feel more comfortable. I think we don't necessarily have to say it's John Smith from wherever calling in. We can say, here's a question about this particular topic. It'll be recorded for our viewers and our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just goes back to what we were saying earlier. We're not giving medical advice because we don't know the individuals that are asked the question. It's just one question in the context of everything.
Yeah.
But it's just enough to steer them in the right direction. So whether they seek you out as far as more of an in-depth consultation, or maybe that's not feasible depending on where they're located, say, here's some cool people I know in your neck of the woods. Make that intro and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole idea is just to help people share the correct information as we see it, and just help people out with their things.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this was fun, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's fantastic. Well, to kind of final things off over here, or finish things off, not slur my words a little bit. So I'd like to thank you once again for taking time out of your
man, my pleasure. It's so good to hang out.
That wraps up another episode of the Stavrou Method, Holistic Approach to Optimal Health and Wellness. And I'm going to have a link to Dr. Rob's website. We're also going to be mentioning his upcoming book in the next little bit. We're going to have a Q&A thing set up as well. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Rob, is it okay if I include, say, your email address as well?
Please do. Yeah, Robert@LifelongWell. They could DM me on Instagram. I'm very accessible, very approachable. Yeah. Anything I can help with, please. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah, so that information is going to be posted in the podcast on our respective websites. And if anybody of our listeners need anything, they know how to find us.
Absolutely. Please do. Reach
Fantastic.
out. All right, man. Enjoy the rest of the morning.
Yep.